So ladies, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for being willing to share your wisdom. We're so grateful. I'd like to start our timer so that I don't lose track of where we are. And I'd like to start with Stephanie and Kazi. What is, as you look back on your lives, what has been the biggest regret maybe that you had in either marriage or parenting, and what advice would you give now to your younger self about those early years?
My biggest regret is not sharing my spirituality enough with my children. You know, I grew up in the Methodist church, and my family, my parents never told me that, they never said I love you, and they weren't big huggers. I tell my kids all the time, every single time we get off the phone, I say, I love you, and we're big huggers. And even during COVID, we gave angel hugs. You know, that's what we did, angel hugs. I did that with my son the other day. I said, angel hugs. And so I regret doing that. And another regret that I have is, and I hope I don't step on anybody's toes or anything, but when Michelle and Cynthia were in elementary school at one of the public schools, I regretted not taking them out sooner. I realized that as they got into the 4th and 5th grades, behavior issues with some of the other children started. And I saw how the teachers' hands were tied. And because there's an attitude with the kids are there because they have a right to be there. When you're in private school, you're there, or homeschooling, you're there as a privilege. And with some of the children that were misbehaving, it only takes one, and they're a whirling dervish, and the teacher's hands are tied, and by the time they can really seriously do something with that child and get it out of the classrooms that they can finish teaching the other children, so much damage had been done. And so I really regret. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I know. To be fair, like she also she was meeting with the principal, and I mean she you know, she worked really hard to make it work, and
and I eventually did throw my hands up. And so that's when we started paying for private school. And because at the time, even in here in Houston and where we ended up living, there wasn't a whole lot of homeschooling. And and my friends weren't doing that, so I went with my friends, you know, to some of the private schools, and it's outrageously expensive, but it was so worth it, you know, because I needed for my kids to be safe. I got tired of this one coming home crying.
Well, but then also the schools that we went to had that, you know, they were religious schools, and so they, you know, they had that theology that, I mean,
yeah,
I loved. And
that's true. Yeah. That's true. Well, and there was actually there was a big turning point for me when Cynthia, my middle child, I was told that she was sitting there at a desk reading her book, and one of the little boys came by and slam dunked her head into the desk. And somebody else checked you into, you know, bumped you into the school bus. You know, yeah.
I read all that, yeah.
Yeah, and these are supposed to be your friends. And but the teachers' hands were tied. You know, they couldn't. You know, they had to follow the protocol. And I thought, you know what, I'm done.
But it wasn't like a small. Like I passed out. Like I hit my head and I fainted next to the school bus. And even still, then it wasn't enough to like pull the kid.
No. That's right. So I pulled my kids. And to the principal's credit, she did move you to a different classroom in January. But that was still, that was hard. That was really hard. So, you didn't have to deal with that homeschooling.
I'm horrified.
Well, I interpreted this question two ways.
Great.
And the first was, I mean, what we all regret, you know. I wasn't kinder in this moment. I wasn't intelligent enough to realize X in that moment. I didn't think that was really what you were looking for. So some of the bigger mistakes that I made in my life, though, I'm not sure that I could have done anything differently. They're so formative as to who I am now, and yet I would tell my younger self, and I would tell my children and my grandchildren, don't do it. So, for example, I married a Jewish man who's no longer Jewish. He's still as Jewish, but he's Catholic. But every religious tradition would tell you you don't marry outside of your faith, and they're right. You don't. That's the most idiotic thing you can do. But I was a baby Christian. My parents were dead. I guess the people who would have told me were busy with their own problems at the time, and the church, as long as I went through the dispensation, was fine with it. And people did tell me. I'm not being fair. People did tell me that it was ridiculous, but I didn't. I grew up as a enlightened woman. It didn't occur to me that they were right. So I would tell my younger self not to do it, and yet there are so many gifts that came out of that. The richness of having been privileged to be part of a Jewish family is inexpressible. My kids got so much out of it, and have used it in their, my daughter who's in religious life, my son who's a priest, it's a constant foundation for their teaching. So do I regret it? I mean, how could I regret it? My life I wouldn't have Colleen. I'm not gonna regret it. But I would tell myself not to do it.
I think one of the things that we all need advice on is the conversation that we have with our children over sexuality. And do y'all have any recommendation to moms here about?
Ask them and they'll tell you everything you
We get to the
Yes.
So Colleen and I we both brought the same book.
Michelle told me about this book actually.
And somebody even smarter told me about it. So it's called Wonderfully Made. And it's a Catholic perspective on how and why God makes babies for ages 9 and up. Okay, and it does look like a children's picture book. Okay,
It's more for 9.
Well, no, I mean.
But you could go, yes, you
Okay,
could,
so
but you start at 9, I guess.
When Annie was 9, we read this, and it starts off it starts off about about more theology of the body stuff, that God is love and the Bible, and then Genesis, and then the concept of 3 in 1, and then it goes to Adam and Eve, and this is we turned the page after it goes to Adam and Eve, and then it gets to more biological stuff, and this is the page where my 9, almost 10-year-old was like, I think that this is good for right now. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I just all the advice that I've ever been given has been, let them lead the conversation. They'll let you, the advice that I have kind of lived by is when is the right time to start talking about sex and puberty and all that kind of stuff is now. No matter how old your kids are, when you're changing their diapers and your toddler's sitting there next to you and what's that? Pointing to baby brother or whatever. Name the parts, talk about it openly. And I went to one talk where a woman was talking about this exact subject, and she said, you may not have the right answer in that moment for whatever question that they are asking. You might say the wrong thing, and that's good. That's fine. Say the wrong thing, and then go when you're laying in bed at night berating yourself, why did I say that? Then you wake up, you make breakfast, and you go and you sit back down. And you're like, you know what? I said something to you yesterday, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because I think maybe we need to expound on that, and that you can't. You might not have the right answer, but it's better to have that open dialogue than to not talk about it. Like, it's better to like give the wrong answer and then rewind than to like just be like, you know, I don't know, we'll talk about that when you're older.
Well, for younger kids, I think it's really important too to just answer their question at their level.
Yeah.
So like for instance,
Answer exactly. what
yeah,
they
and to answer, yeah, so like if all of my kids have always been like, wait, how does the baby come out? That's not, you don't need to go like through all of sex for that. You can just say, well, moms have 3 holes. There's a mom, that's it. You just say like, there's a pee hole and a poop hole and a baby hole. And they're like, oh, okay. They're like totally fine with that. They don't even care.
Pregnancy is a great time to talk about
It's
it.
like they always think it's gonna come out of the belly button. You're like, no. And you can like show them. There's like tons of really good videos. So I teach 7th grade science, and right now we're doing reproduction. So you can imagine we have this conversation all the time with my 7th graders. But I'm tasked with only going through the biological side of it. We also teach Canavox. Have you guys heard of Canavox? So, but I don't do that part. And then also, so there's a Canavox teacher who comes in, the Opus Dei Canavox teacher comes in, Martha Martinez. She teaches them Canavox. Then the religion teacher teaches them theology of the body, similar to Canavox, but a little bit different. And then I do the biological part. And it's all about the same time. We try to line it up, but it's not exactly lined up. Like right now, I'm just starting with heredity, sort of talking about how we inherit traits. And then we'll very quickly get into reproduction. But I don't really talk about like intercourse or anything. We just talk about like why you need 2 copies of genes, and I go through the whole like biological reasons why they need 2 copies of genes, and why you need 2 parents to take care of a baby. Like very secular, because I want them to see that God designed this to be the best way biologically for a child to, not just spiritually and mentally, but also just physically, it's the best chance for the baby to have. So anyway, so that's why when I answer questions for my kids, it's always very biological, unfortunately for them. I'm not like, well, moms and dads have, the baby just beautifully comes, I always am like, well, it comes out through the vagina, and you know, I'm very like, I just say it exactly how it is. And there's really good videos online that are like, almost like clear, like the body's clear and very like CG, so you're not seeing a lot of, so the kids can kind of see what the inside looks like and really see just like the baby come out without seeing like a woman's actual body, you know, it's like CG, so they can kind of get an idea if they're younger, and they can just watch that, or they can watch the baby develop in the womb, and it's like very kind of like, it's more CG if you don't want them to see like an actual woman giving birth, you just want them to see the mechanical, like how the baby comes out. That's what I would do.
Yeah, well, and this one, like, I mean, like this ties it from the biology to the theology. So it's like soul from God, sperm from Adam.
Yeah.
And like, I really, really love this book. And then I brought like a couple other ones that were recommended to me by the same woman that recommended this. And so this one is The Care and Keeping of You. It's American Girls, but it is actually really good. There's a second one that's like for like older teens, but this one is for all ages. And then there's this one which was really helpful, especially with our boys. Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and there's a younger version of this that's Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, but we don't have that one, so because our kids don't have a lot of internet access before.
There's a I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called Rua Woods Institute. So Cathedral's doing it. The Real Woods Institute. It's in high school, but I think they do homeschool. They go all the way to kindergarten. They have really good materials, so I think you can order their materials. It starts, and it's similar to Canavox, where they always start with like friendship, how to be friends, the dignity of the human body. So you're always kind of building on that, on how to have a relationship with a person, because I think the problem with our culture today is that if you have any sort of feeling of love in any sort of way, the culture wants to turn it to sexual love. And so teaching the kids that you can have friendship, a healthy friendship, I think is the starting point always. That friendship is the beginning even of love, or even of sexual love. But but when a kid feels like feelings for their friend, that could just be friendly love, you know, like, but we have a really hard time in our culture, like, oh, if you're really attracted to someone and you want to be with them all the time, that must mean that you're sexually attracted to them, but not necessarily. So I think that you really need to teach them how to be good friends first. Box does a good job with that. Ruwitz does a good job with that. If you wanted to buy their stuff.
How do you say it? What woods?
Ruah, R-U-A-H.
Ruah Woods.
Woods Institute. And at the time when I was looking at it, it was like beta. They were still kind of testing. But I think they're selling it. I think is it ready? Has anybody bought it?
I haven't bought it, but I saw that.
Yeah. And I know that they're
All the
doing
way
it
down
in
to
Cathedral. So, with the high schoolers. So I get some of the stuff. With Canavox, what you do is, Canavox is harder because it's, like, you have to have a trained person to come in and do it. So Magnolia has one, and Western has one that the guy flies in the summer sometimes, but not like every summer. But we have the materials from our oldest son. And what you're supposed to do is like read the material ahead of time with your son, and then they go, and then the instructor does it. And it's the same kind of stuff. It's like starts with friendship, and then they talk about pornography, they talk about abortion, they talk about homosexuality, they talk about everything, but it's done really well, and depending on their age, they go deeper or less deep into things. Like the 7th graders and 8th graders both get it at Magnolia, but I think the 7th graders don't have abortion, but the 8th graders do. Like that kind of stuff, they go kind of feeds into the next one. So, but it's really good. So I would recommend if you are able to ever get your hands on that or find some. It's hard. They don't always do it.
Are there adult groups still? There used to be adult groups.
Yeah,
right?
so some of the Opus Dei girls clubs, when the girls meet, the moms meet too, and talk about the Canavox stuff, so that you can dissimulate your knowledge from your mom's group to your children. So, yes, we do. But that one's not quite like, it's not like a course. Like the Canavox course is like involved. You have like a folder and you have all the stuff, and they
But
have
there
questions.
was a Canavox, because Martha Martinez was leading it. It was before COVID. I was.
Yeah, there is a course, it's like 14 lessons.
Yeah.
In a box for moms.
For moms, okay, and so she's doing it. Yeah, so
Or,
I think.
I
I think because Martha's here, she's more able to do it more often, whereas the man who does it is not, live in Houston, so unfortunately. We need a man to step up and teach Canavox,
Get
so,
trained.
you know.
Thank you, that is so helpful, all those resources. I will actually type them up and send them out after, for anybody who didn't take notes.
You know what, I want to add one
Yes,
thing.
please do.
It's amazing the big jump. I love this because I would just say to my kids, leave room for the Holy Spirit. I did, that was a joke in the family. And I was like, my son, keep your pants up, keep your pants zipped, and your hands to yourself. So we wasn't bleeding down.
Well, I think it's really important though, because I think of myself, I mean, I just learned basically don't have sex until you're married, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's really unhelpful,
Right.
like, information. Because A, you don't know the reasons why, except for you know it's a mortal sin and that it's bad to have sex before you get married, but you don't know why the other things, the slippery slope is bad, right? Even the slippery slope of becoming too attached to someone, even if you're not doing anything sexual. Just things like that, or just becoming just obsessed with a crush or whatever. Protecting your heart. So I think all of that stuff needs to be talked about when they're teenagers, obviously, so that they can date with integrity.
And with older kids, there's another book called Unprotected that talks a lot about that. It's written by a psychologist about the impact to the person of having unprotected sex and what that does to them. And it sort of explains from a sociology study what it's done to our culture. It's a great book for high schoolers or college kids.
Well, and like that concept of like emotional chastity, not just like physical chastity, but like emotional chastity, that is not something that our kids will ever encounter anywhere else in the entire world.
Right.
And our kids are like exposed in like to social media in a way that like we were never exposed to. Like the kind of, it's not just social media, it's like magazine ads, like everything, movies, like everything is like that they are exposed to, just living in the world is like hyper sexualized in minute ways that we don't even
Billboards
know.
while you're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so like we have to like talk about it, and we have to like, it's almost like being like geared up for battle.
That's
We
right.
have to have it.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's take a shift from into the deeper reason for why we need that emotional chastity and go into marriage.